Canadians are leaving in record numbers, emigrating out of the country. Obviously, I was an early indicator of that, but we just have this numbers from Stats Canada, which show that there was a 215% increase year over year in the fourth quarter of 2021 compared to 2020. That amounted to a total of over 16,000 people leaving in that quarter and over 55,000 people leaving Canada for 2021 in total. This quarter is the highest rate that people have been emigrating away from Canada since 1974. So it's been a long time since this many people have been moving away permanently. That's the statistic that Stats Canada collects. And so this is an interesting question. Is this an indicator of a future trend? Are there underlying structural issues? What is going to happen going forward? I'm going to dive into those questions in just a moment. And so let's get started. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notifications bell. Thank you for being here. If you'd like help with relocating abroad, with getting residencies and citizenships, figuring out where to go, optimizing your global tax, etc., please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or send a message to our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com. Now, as a Canadian, I pay more attention to Canada than I do to some other countries. My family, my parents and my two brothers still live in Canada. My grandparents have passed away now, so not so much there. I didn't leave until after my last grandmother had passed away, and so anyway, it's interesting to see kind of the trends and see how are things changing since I left. What are other people feeling about the same situation? I've definitely noticed an uptick since January when there was the trucker convoy and emergency powers things enacted by Trudeau. In Canadians contacting us who are concerned about what's going on in Canada, what's interesting about these stats is that these stats predate that, right? That would be Q1 2022. This was Q4 2021. Now, to be fair, the numbers as they are reported are somewhat deceptive because in 2020, the pandemic made it difficult for people to leave, and so numbers were artificially low. If you look at the rolling average, the numbers are up over a 5-year period from what they were previously, and so there's definitely that trend. But Q4 in particular was very high, but not quite as dramatic as what it is that was being stated. Now, to be fair, there are still more people going into Canada than leaving Canada. Canada is a really popular place for immigrants. It's not surprising why. There's a lot of opportunity there, and so it makes sense for you to go there if you're, say, coming from India. I talked to a lot of people from kind of the India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Philippines, etc. part of the world where they say there's a kind of a cultural goal to go and move to Australia or the US or Canada or UK, something like that. And so, good on them. It's part of the kind of Canadian objective to draw them in. I think the stats are they try to bring in something like 400,000 new immigrants per year. So pretty large if you consider that the overall Canadian population is around 35 million, pretty decent. And that's part of the, I guess, strategy in order to kind of fuel the economy and keep things going. You have young people who are coming into the workforce, that props up the housing market, et cetera, right? This being said, what is the state with Canada at the moment? Some people would say that it is catastrophically bad. Some people were deeply concerned. I think there's reason to be concerned. It was globally kind of alarming to see what Trudeau did. There was some people in the European Parliament, it was probably, the news reports or little clips that I saw on it were probably exaggerations. There's probably a framing effect of, observing the two people who were, speaking out against Trudeau and saying that he shouldn't be allowed to speak in the European Parliament for being anti-democratic. That being said, the fact that this was publicized and this was happening does go to show the reputation going on there. And definitely he went afterwards and said things against Putin that there was this, what did he call it, something like slippage in democracy, but then he was behaving super undemocratically. So anyway, interesting kind of hypocrisy there. I don't know if it's naivete or maliciousness or stupidity or propaganda or what it is, but anyway, I'm not a big Trudeau fan, clearly. Anyway, I do think that this is not altogether surprising, and I don't think it's just a function of what some people might call rising authoritarianism. I don't think it's just a cultural thing. I don't think it's just a situation where people are feeling concerned. I think those things are all legitimate. Those things are all happening. There's a sense of erosion of rights, checks and balances within government. There's a new, it's Bill C-67 in the Ontario Parliament. It's like anti-racism bill that, it's dubious. There's their, what do they call it? It's like the censorship bill that Trudeau is trying to push federally. So you've got that. Then you have this Emergency Powers Act thing. And you have kind of what's happened with COVID, et cetera. So there's been a bunch of different things going on there that have a bunch of people concerned. And then a bunch of the rhetoric has been kind of concerning. The way that Trudeau has referred to unvaccinated people is, it's sort of concerning. So yeah, you've got those things going on. And I think those things are things that people dislike. But that being said, I think that there is another really obvious explanation, which is a change which I expect to accelerate over time. And this is a twofold function. One is, for the first time for many, many people, they can work remotely. And previously they couldn't. So if you were stuck in an office in one place or another, maybe you worked for an engineering company, maybe you were, working as an accountant, maybe, who knows what you were doing. And you were used to being stuck in a job. And then 2020 came and you had to work from home. And the world said, hey, well, if you can work from home, you can work from anywhere, as long as the time zone works. And people said, well, hang on a minute. It's pretty expensive living here. I'm going to have the same job, make the same money if I live abroad. And the weather's better. Newsflash, Canada does not have great weather. So this is, a pretty major deterrent. And I suspect that what we're going to see globally is that if people can get the same financial opportunities not being in those countries, they will opt to not be in those countries. And this is partially a function of cost of living. This is partially a function of the weather. And it's partially a function of kind of convenience. And so I'm talking about people who are coming in, right? Like if let's say you're relocating from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or Philippines or something like that. There's a reason to come for opportunities. But you've probably got family there. You've probably got a bunch of ties. It's kind of hard to leave. You don't really want to leave. Who wants to leave their family? There's a lot of people who immigrate and then end up sending money back to their family. There's all these overseas remittances, right? And so for many of those people, if they don't have to go, are they going to go? It's probably going to be a decrease over time. And likewise, you're going to have a bunch of people who say, I'd rather be in the sun in Mexico. I have a good friend who lives in Montreal, and he's moving to Cayman Islands. You've got a bunch of other people that I know who have moved down to Mexico, to Panama, to Costa Rica, to other places in Latin America, people who are going to some of the other islands in the Caribbean, and then other people who are going to Asia and Europe, Portugal, etc. So I think that trend is likely to continue. Like weather is a pretty big thing. When you stack on top of that a culture that some people dislike, I think that's going to be a negative. Now, in my opinion, actually immigration has been the thing that is most, it's the biggest cause for optimism in Canada. And the reason is, when you have people who've moved from Vietnam, where you have a communist government, and they don't like these things, they're often trying to get out of there, what do you find? Well, you find pretty clearly that you don't want to have that encouraged in the country that you go to. And so I think generally speaking, immigrants moving into the country will be more likely to tip the direction of politics in a way that is probably pretty healthy. There will be some kind of influences from what they're used to that maybe are uncomfortable to people who pre-existing there, and there is probably more of a culture of nepotism, that sort of thing, getting people to work around the rules for you, etc. That's likely to encroach just as a function of people bringing their culture with them. But I think by and large, they're unlikely to push for some of the things that a lot of people are disliking in Canada at the moment. It will be different, it will be transformational, but not in the way that some people think that it's going to go. We'll see. Could be mistaken. And so, yeah, I think that less people coming, more people going is probably going to be the trend. It will probably take a few years for this to happen. you will likely end up in a situation where it will start to reach more of an equilibrium, and maybe Canada will address that by making it easier to come, because right now it's pretty difficult. We'll see, or maybe they won't. We'll find out. But I expect that we're going to see this trend accelerating over the next few years, at least. But then again, there's always odd things that can come up that may tilt it in a different direction. So we will see. Anyway, with that in mind, I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you would like help with any of these things, please reach out to us. I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.